Alright, this video is indeed about playing DinoCity, the video game for the Super Nintendo. However, before I show you any of the game, I want you to really just take in what the box art of a video game very loosely based on a made-for-TV movie from the 90s you've most likely never heard of is showing you. That is a T-Rex persona with human teeth and limb proportions, wearing a purple velvet jacket, a Walkman, some sick sunglasses, no pants, and some of the most scuffed shoes I have ever seen on a foot. Accompanying him is an equally radical teenager, with a photoshopped-on baseball cap a couple sizes too small for his head, grandfather socks, and equally scuffed shoes. They're in the desert. The kid is sitting on a longboard in the desert, and those wheels aren't made for skating in dirt. What are they doing here, together? Do they make each other mixtapes? This is one of the greatest works of art I have ever had the pleasure of perceiving. Often, the Western box art for games is vastly inferior to the Japanese box art, but I can't believe that's the case for this game. This is the box art of this game, and I refuse to accept any other box art. But after you turn the game on and load into the game, it looks like this? I feel like I was set up to be disappointed by this box art, but I digress. If you read the manual for the game, it's quite obvious what the game looks like, so it's not that much of a surprise anyways. This is DinoCity, a normal, more Mario-style character-based platformer, which I feel like I haven't played for a while in the series. The main gimmick of the game is that you have a dinosaur and child team, and you use them to navigate the various levels, avoiding enemies and harmful obstacles, trying to get to the doors at the end of the level to take you to the next level, where you do it all over again until you hit a boss every 5 stages. There is no world map, but most areas appear to have 2 doors, which I believe do take you to different places. Sometimes they take you to bonus areas. I believe the color of the door tells you if it's going to take you to a bonus area or not, but I'm not exactly sure because sometimes I thought I'd just go to the next level, but the door took me to a bonus area instead, so I can't really speak with expertise on the subject. You have 2 teams to choose from, which boil down to T-Rex melee team and Triceratops range team. I could find pretty much no success with the T-Rex as a combination of both learning some weirdly precise collision mechanics in addition to the T-Rex attack being pathetically short range. The Triceratops team with a range attack feels a lot better for this game. You can also jump on enemies to damage and defeat them, but this leads to some pretty gnarly physics interactions most of the time, so I prefer to avoid it. The game considers itself to have 6 worlds with 5 stages each, but I wouldn't say each world has any kind of theme. There's ice-style stages in multiple worlds, field and forest-style stages in multiple worlds, so on and so forth. It looks more like they had their level designers come up with a bunch of levels with the assets they had, and then they decided on a difficulty order to put things in, finding some novelty to put here and there to mix things up. I mostly appreciate the level design, but it took me a while to get used to. These frog things at the beginning of the first level threw me through a loop for a bit before I figured out that the best thing to do was just not land on them, because they seem to be perfectly timed to damage me, and you only get 3 hits before you die. If I'm remembering correctly, you get 3 lives and 2 continues to make it through a world, where after beating a boss you get a password so that you can start at the next world the next time you play. The game's pretty generous with checkpoints in levels, and the game over means you still continue from the beginning of the last stage you were on, which is fairly generous compared to this game's contemporaries, is what I would say if this wasn't the hard mode of the Japanese version of the game. Apparently the Japanese version of the game has a normal and hard mode, and the normal mode gives you 5 hits and unlimited continues. Genuinely, if this game interests you after watching this video, I'd highly recommend playing the Japanese version of the game, as I think that would provide you a much better experience in this particular version if you aren't interested in using save states. To address the gameplay directly, I was having a pretty acceptable amount of fun playing through most of this game. I'm not sure if that phrase makes sense, but I can't really think of anything else to say about it. The game works, it has its ups and downs. I hate the ice physics, they feel kind of incompetent, and the ice parts of the game are pretty terribly designed in general, at least the ones I saw. But I like the boss fights that I got to, which were the first 3, and generally like the combination of more typical platformer stages with things like the roller coaster stage and the first Ferris Ferris wheel stage to keep me on my toes while playing. Nothing made me too mad until I got to the second Ferris wheel stage, which made me realize I definitely wasn't going to beat this game before I made this video, which beating a game isn't really the point of these videos, but I was considering it until I got here. As you are seeing it now, this game doesn't really earn being as hard as it is at this point. The game is functional but poorly optimized. So this particular section of the game is played with slowdown. While you're being forced to make precise movements because you don't have a stationary place to stand, you have to jump constantly, try to manage the number of enemies on screen, and avoid being hit by projectiles to manage your very small amount of health all at the same time. And while the competitive part of me thinks this is a cool concept, is executed quite poorly here, and the game designers knew it too because they put a constantly spawning one up in the middle of this stage, which they had done on other occasions when a spot was a little more difficult than the rest of the game to compensate for the increase in difficulty. I haven't mentioned the graphics here yet, but they're pretty high quality for a non-Nintendo game being released at this point in the Super Nintendo's life cycle. Definitely above average overall for art direction. As I'm sitting here writing this, I can't remember any music from the hour I played, so it was neither good nor bad, I reckon. Just video game music. This game is a competent platformer that I think you should check out if you're interested and somehow have played every other great game for the system. Please play the Japanese version normal mode though. That will probably save you a lot of pain, especially if the infinite continues. Now, that's about all I have to say for this game at this point, but if you've made it to this point in the video, I'd like to talk to you about the future of my channel. Whether this is the first video you've seen of mine or not, considering you were at least intrigued enough by the content to get here, or you just weren't paying attention to the video, but we'll ignore that possibility. I've been making these Super Nintendo in order videos for about a year now, not consistently, mind you, but I think I've hit my limit for experimenting where this idea as it exists now is probably not gonna get the traction I'd like it to get in the algorithm or YouTube performance, at least in the way that I am executing it right now. I really like making content, and I do feel like my videos have been improving since I started, but I have very limited free time as an older person with a job and a family, and I'm already limited on the amount of time I have to spend on making YouTube-specific content, as I've been working on getting a podcast out with some friends over the past few months. I think I'm going to transition to making longer deep dives on the more interesting Super Nintendo games, as opposed to just playing everything in order for now, because since my time is limited, I'm a bit time gated on the most compelling games I can get to covering, and no, this isn't because the next game I would be playing if I was playing them all in order is a baseball game, I promise. My focus will still be on the more obscure games and never localized games. Another reason for my content production being limited is I'm actively studying Japanese and have been for a long time, as I'd like to make videos on games without fan translations. But I'll be making more long-form essays or reviews on games that get a bit more of an emotional reaction out of me and inspire me more creatively. Since if I were to wait for that to happen naturally, I may never get there considering the sheer number of Super Nintendo games there are. If you're interested in seeing more of that, please subscribe to my channel. Those videos will take longer to make, but I promise they'll be coming sooner rather than later, as I feel like I've gotten into a better rhythm for my workflow for video making. Please like this video if you liked it, and if you're inclined, leave me a comment telling me what your favorite Super Nintendo game is, because my favorite Super Nintendo game is what my next video is going to be about. It's not an obscure game, to be honest, but I'm excited to talk about it either way, so please watch out for that. And have a great day.